Okay, you're back. Hope it's better news this time.
Move approval. Second. Any discussion or comments? All in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Is he have an item on
Old business number 1. Near and dear.
Richard Usa is here because of private ways, I understand. Is that true?
Actually, you continued Isabella Street, which was on the agenda for last week, to this meeting. So it's actually a part of, but also somewhat separate from.
Can I have a motion to take that out of order?
So moved.
Is that so?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ned, you want to start?
Sure. As part of last week's meeting, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, the bigger discussion was the Isabella Street. We have no record of it being a public way. We deemed it as being a private way, or cards say it is a private way. Yet we have at least one, if not 2, public utilities in that way. We have a public water line that we know we have records on it. We don't have records on the sewer line, and that's one of the issues that's been coming up, the fact that we have no records of it being a public sewer line, and it's failing. And with it, there are at least 11 families, Richard, on it, you told me? On that sewer line in 2 different properties. So the question is, who is going to fix it before it fails completely and we have a bigger problem?
Is it a slow motion train wreck or is it imminent?
It's imminent. It's not going to happen. It's a matter of when. I looked at the video that you sent me today, or dropped off today, but my understanding it's full of gravel materials. It's collapsing.
Is it tile?
It is some kind of tile or concrete.
12-inch, I think they call it AC concrete.
Asbestos cement. That's what that would be. If that's what it is.
Right.
That's what your guys ID'd it as when they came.
So there was some discussion at the meeting, at the last meeting, about private ways in general and how this particular issue falls in line with dealing with all the private ways, and whether this rises to a level of needing to be resolved sooner than sort of moving ahead with everything else in sort of a format that I think the discussion with the mayor was all these private ways need to be dealt with. Let's deal with them all systematically.
Right.
So it was just discussed about the priority of Isabella Street or others for that matter that may rise to a level of needing to peel them off and try to deal with that.
Richard?
Yeah, if I may, and thank you very much. My name is Richard Abusa. I live at 245 Chestnut Street in Florence. Really appreciate your time. I appreciate Ned Huntley's had to devote a lot of time to this. I believe that this is the appropriate moment to peel it back from the private way issue, and that with some additional information, which I'm going to bring to you now, I think it's clear that this does not need to be accelerated or something that drives an acceleration of a full-scale private way discussion, but is really better described as a sewer issue. So, and I apologize if I'm a little frustrating, but this seemed to be something that was simple at the beginning and it's complicated. And we have been trying to work with the city to be cooperative in addressing this, and even if it is, I want to state emphatically, even if it is fully a city problem, we're going to figure out if there's ways that we can be supportive of that financially, because we understand budgetary constraints. So in the midst of the citywide private street snow plowing issue, we had this sewer fail. Everybody who looked at this 12-inch AC sewer pipe remarked on how big it was, and that it was surprised how big, and the comments the people, the professionals, the city people, the contractor had assumed it was a city sewer. Then we learned it might be private street, and that the city couldn't find a record. And that was the key issue. The city couldn't find a record of installing this sewer line. And then as part of your deliberations last week, we were all told that it only serviced one house. And I never believed this. This is our building at the corner, which services 9 families. It just didn't seem logical. It wasn't consistent with just everything we knew about who had owned the house, the fact that it ran the whole length of the street, the size of the pipe. And so I just was so frustrated, I actually hired a private camera company to come in, got my neighbor's permission, and we cameraed his house because he said, I think mine goes into this. And sure enough, 10 feet out, straight into Isabella Street, goes into this main line down Isabella Street. And I felt like we were being marginalized on what was something that was so clearly a city sewer. You know, it walked like a duck and it quacked like a duck and whatever. And there's another house, and I haven't gotten permission to go into there, but if I have to, I'll spend more money, get that scoped out. I guess what I'm saying is the fact that the city records do not show the installation or the city records that we can find, I don't think is particularly germane. I've served on town boards for over 30 years. I've been dealing. I'm a licensed building contractor. I've had a lot of interfaces with the city, and nothing's perfect. You know, records somehow get lost. I was supposed to be on the agenda tonight. You voted at your last meeting to have Isabella Street continued. You know, it wasn't there. Stuff happens. I understand that. I think we got a city sewer in this street. There's no other plausible explanation, and so, you know, Isabella, I'd love to see it be a public street, but I do understand you have a process, and that has more to do with snowplow, and we can discuss that at another time. But I would suggest to you folks that really what we have is a sewer issue. A mainline sewer down a street that, you know, may be technically private, but, you know, in a day and age when people weren't making that distinction, which was a long, long time. So, thank you. You've been very patient.
Thanks.
So, just so the Board of Public Works knows, back in early 2000, for 2001, the city did go and install water lines, sewer lines, drain lines, new pavement, curbing, et cetera, on 3 private ways that I'm aware of. King Avenue, Warner Row, and Paquette Avenue, utilizing city funds and enterprise funds for that work.
In the full knowledge that they were private ways?
Yes.
Okay. So there is a precedent for it. I mean, I thought about this, and we've never met, but I thought about this the week, and there are a couple observations I want to make. First off, I think that to a certain extent, whether it's a public or private way, the fact that there is a fee that you guys have been paying for services implies some sort of obligation on the part of the city. We're providing services, they're providing a fee. I have absolutely no problem if there's not a legal barrier to separating this from the private way issue, which I see as potentially being a many-month process. I know we're thinking about snow removal as sort of the deadline for getting it, but you know, good intentions pave roads, but they don't necessarily get them plowed. So I see that there's a precedent for that as well, unless there's a legal barrier. So I would like to find a way, particularly given what Ned said, that there is precedent for use of public funds to do this kind of work, to see if we can't move forward with this, separate of the private way issue.
Outside of the cost of it, what's the downside of us repairing?
I guess the downside would be, would we be obligated to fix other private sewers on private ways?
Yeah.
And would
Especially
we
ones that are-
repave the street?
Well, I mean, Isabella's a little bit different than quite a few of our private ways where we don't do any work on them except for plowing. There's some that we only do plowing on. There's others that look, smell like Hillcrest. They look like city ways. Isabella looks like a city way. In fact, we paved it, I think, in the past 15 or 20 years. It's on our Chapter 90 list as a street. Yeah.
How do you get on the list?
You apply to the state to get on the list. But it's very clear. I mean, our records show it's a private way.
If this were clearly a city street, would the condition of this particular sewer line bump it to the top of the list?
We'd be doing repairs out there up to the property line, which is basically probably within 5 feet of the edge of the pavement or so.
And under those circumstances, Would that work be scheduled for almost immediately, or?
It would if we had a failure like this, yes.
And do you have a cost estimate,
No,
ballpark?
not off the top of my head because I haven't thought about it.
Do we need a ruling from the city solicitor? Would that shed any
That's
light
the
on this?
conversation I had with Mr. Abuza earlier today, is I need some guidance from the board and or city solicitor.
Has the city solicitor tuned into the whole private way question?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, he's, at least his official position is that it needs to be done by the book.
The whole thing?
Yeah,
All of the
as if
private
you
ways,
were
right.
building a subdivision and you put in there Dave Shearer,
Yeah.
subdivision contractor, and just get a sheet telling you to this, and this.
Right.
He has softened to some extent, but you know, he feels it needs to be done properly.
But what's improper about our fixing this situation?
I don't know, maybe we need to get his opinion. Mike, do you have a thought?
Well, I think what's improper is we know that we'd be spending public money on a private way. And that's a shame, because for all the reasons that others have advanced, it sure sounds like it's a public sewer. And everything that everyone's described. I'm not sure that the precedent helps us a lot. It might, I mean, might make us feel better. But I would like to try to find a way to fix it. I mean, it's always better to fix these things before there are consequential damages, which are backups into houses, and you know, we're aware of the problem, and you know, it seems like it, with one exception, we'd be out there fixing it.
If we were running the sewer through a series of backyards, just because it was a connector or something, would we be looking for some kind of easements
We
from?
would have easements, that's correct.
That's possibly a solution here?
It could be a temporary solution while we go through the public way process.
It's good. Have the abutters grant the city an easement?
Yeah.
Could be just a temporary, it could be a temporary easement that,
Well, it should go with the life of the pipe in case the street doesn't go through the process. Or, you know, I mean, it should be a permanent, I guess, I don't know quite what the legal term would be, but I don't see it as being a 6-month assignment of rights.
Yeah, we have already talked about, you know, in the context of the private way discussion, we know that there's some legal costs, and that would be something clearly that I think we could go to the owners. They're all cooperative and whatever. And by the way, just as an interesting note, probably about 3 weeks ago, you had a street collapse due to the fact that this sewer was in such bad shape. And the city did go on Isabella Street, dug up the street, repaired a section of the sewer, and repaved. So, you know, precedent's already
It's a
out of
mess,
the bag.
yeah, it's a mess.
When was that?
3 weeks ago?
I don't know.
I could probably look on my camera and
Well,
tell you.
recently.
Within a couple of, I think maybe a couple days before or after your last meeting.
Well, could,
Well, the other thought, instead of an easement, we could get perhaps a right of entry.
But we always get rights of entry. We could do
Rights of
that.
entry, I mean, I'm just trying to think of a
That's how we-
simpler process.
yeah,
than
whatever,
an easement.
I mean,
Right.
I may not be using the right
Right,
term.
I know, but I'm trying
But
to
that's
think of
typically
something
how
that
we
would
do
be
with our
easier.
construction projects, because they're temporary grading activities on front lawns, things of that nature,
Right.
chasing grades of driveways.
But we don't have to go through the legal process every time we wanted to.
Not with the right of entry.
Okay. Gary?
Well, I'm just thinking in the larger context of private ways. I mean, I can't imagine that we would say to private way owners that in order to get their street accepted, they have to replace the sewer mains, the water mains, and the underground utilities before we can accept the road.
Right.
I mean, at a certain point, you're gonna say, well, the conditions are good enough, right? So, who's to say that if all of that work did get done, then we accept it done, there's an earthquake and we're out there fixing the sewers anyway. I mean, you know, it's,
Well, Jim, does it seem reasonable to talk to Alan Seawald and
Where'd
get
Ned go? Well, let me answer your question.
Ned
I think it makes sense. I mean, to me, it seems like figuring out the appropriate instrument to use, whether it's a right of entry or an easement, to allow,
You're the best.
I take back what I just said about it.
All of us?
We were I was just telling Terry that we could talk to the city solicitor about the most appropriate legal instrument to be able to get in there and repair the sewer, whether it's a right of entry or a temporary easement or a permanent easement. It seems like, I'm no lawyer, but it seems to me some type of easement which has more of a permanence might be more appropriate for investment in infrastructure along the street versus a right of entry, which is generally, you can do something on the property. But again, it's probably better a question for the solicitor than a city engineer.
Does that seem comfortable to,
Sure, we can
I
approach
mean,
it
does
like
that capture the sense of the board?
Yeah.
And maybe we would have a cost estimate
Mhm.
at the next meeting.
How's
I
that
don't
feel?
know, I
Great.
think, it sounds like we ought to be moving before the next meeting if we could, as opposed to having it come back to the board. I don't know how others.
So, let's see, like a motion to approve action, presuming that the legal
Subject to
issues are,
approval of the legal rights of entry by the city solicitor.
is that a motion?
Yes, it was, I hope you got it.
I didn't say it.
It must be on the tape. I move that the department proceed with the repair of the sewer on Isabella Street, subject to approval of the legal rights of entry by the city solicitor.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you for your
That should
time.
work.
And thank you for your service to the city.
Okay,
I do
thanks.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess we're still on private ways. Maybe just to take another moment. You've all seen these emails going around.
No, yeah, that's what I was asking.
Uh-huh.
I hadn't
It's
seen
right
this
here in
before.
front of you.
I see it now.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
that one, exactly. Well, I ask you to just look at it. I can send out an electronic copy of it. It's just trying to pull together ideas of how we might go through the process. It's not a definitive list of things. There might be whole categories that it'd be a good idea to add into this. I just thought it'd be easy to start adding details as we come up with them.
Terry,
Yes.
this was discussed with the City Council Board of Public Works Joint Committee meeting last week. And the councilors seem to favor meetings by ward rather than city-run.
It's true. Gary?
We should probably see, I'm not sure how many private ways are in how many wards, but I think most of them are in 3.
Actually, I was working on a list just before the meeting too, because we found 3 new streets.
Okay. Oh, great.
Excellent.
Well, let's get them all.
Hope it's not big here.
I mean, I suspect there are some wards that don't have any private ways, but I could be wrong, or there's some that have 1 or 2, so maybe we can back some of them, but it seems like a, kind of break it down to size. It'd be nice to have ward councilors involved.
All right, well, any ideas, let us know, and I'm just gonna keep trying to add detail to this.
If we have a list, we could break it out into ward, and that would help.
Yeah, it's on
Fine.
spreadsheet, so we can
Fine.
make it very easily.
Yeah.
Some streets, everyone agrees there are a few streets that will be easy to say no to. And of course, there's some streets that we obviously want to say yes to. And there are gonna be some in the middle, and my thought would be that until we have the process all in a in the kind of shape where we can just hand someone a piece of paper that explains the process, it would be premature, even in those cases where we already think we know what the outcome is. It'd be premature to act on that, I would think. So, my inclination is I'm just speaking as like this would be my proposal. That we work on figuring out the process and then.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that done in private ways? So new business.
But before we move on, just because I'm woefully unprepared to deal with this issue moving forward, so who do I need to talk to get a tutorial on private ways? And
Well, if we got the list, I'd actually kind of enjoy doing another tour.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually interesting.
Takes a few hours.
yeah, okay,
We did a tour a few years ago. It's interesting. At times, residents of various streets have been in front of us, imploring the board or the department to do something to fix a drainage problem,
Right.
do this or do that. And when we were going around, we were approached by at least two people saying, basically,
Get away
what
from
the hell
it."
are you doing
Yeah.
here?
yeah,
And at times, those are one and the same, the same street. They're saying we want public money, and what the hell? Who gave you the right to come here? It's fascinating. Basically, there's a statute, Massachusetts statute, saying that before a city can expend public funds to plow or otherwise maintain private property, the correct procedure is they have a referendum where the voters approve their city government spending money on private property,
gotcha,
which is it's just hard to imagine that would
right,
ever pass.
yeah,
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't think it will pass.
If the issue is only snow plowing, I would think it would pass, because we're doing it now in dollars on the tax rate, what is it, a couple of cents?
Well, I think it's expenditure of public funds, period. Just,
Right.
this came out as ruling on snow plowing.
This is the letter you referred to, the
This is
Attorney General's letter?
Inspector General's office.
Inspector General's office. When is that from, do you know?
2005, sent to the town of Wellfleet. I did receive a call back from the Wellfleet town administrator, and I just haven't hooked up with them yet, how they rectified their problem.
But Dave has a link to the exact statute.
You do?
Chapter 60, 6, C and D. I've got some stuff here, it's very short, goes back to 1943, and it's been dormant, so, 70 years.
Right.
What was the thing you mentioned, that the Inspector General?
That's the Inspector General's letter that came out that stated that particular statute that had to be followed to be able to plow private ways.
Who's the Inspector General?
I'd have to go see the letter. There's a name on there somewhere.
You want his phone number, David?
I've never heard of one.
The Inspector General's office.
There's a Robert McDonald in that office. I speak to him regularly.
About what?
30B.
Procurement issues,
Procurement, 30B.
issues I've been involved in.
I've never heard the term in Massachusetts.
All right. New business.
Right, sorry about that, thank
That's
you.
fine. First, a one-year extension to the June 7, 2000, extend until June 7, 2013. Contract 362-11 for sludge disposal to Moortown landfill.
Move approval.
Second.
This is all of where our wastewater treatment plant sludge and grits and this are going to. The bid was done last year. They're low bid by $15 a ton anyways. This increases with the CPI index that we haven't calculated yet, but will probably be in the 2 to 3% area for an increase. And it's has 2 one-year extensions with it. So this be the first extension. So there's still another potential year after this one.
Any discussion?
This is in Vermont.
It is, it's in
Yeah.
Moortown, Vermont, which is just north of Montpelier.
What do we do, pay so much a ton?
We do, includes trucking.
They come and get it.
They do.
Any other comments? All in favor of approving the extension?
Aye.
Next contract for sodium bicarbonate to Man Chemical in the amount of $38,000.
Move approval.
This is our proposed annual contract to adjust pH at the water treatment plant, also compliance for our lead and copper rule. So it's an annual purchase we make. This year, it's 0.2831 cents per pound. Last year was 0.28 cents per pound. So it increased 0.0031 cents.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contract for water quality testing to Spectrum Analytical in the amount not to exceed $24,999.
This is our annual contract also through the water department for water testing analysis. Their low bidder, high bidder was contest at $13,706 for the year. Howard Environmental Services had a bid rejected because it was incomplete. There was a total of 3 qualified bidders. Last year, the contract was $4,992. This year, it's $7,599.
Is that the same scope?
That's a good question. I don't have last year's contract, so
That's okay.
I don't know.
That's largely driven by the requirements that we've...
Yeah, these are all required by DEP.
All in favor of approving this contract?
Aye.
Next contract for aluminum sulfate to Howland Company in the amount not to exceed also $24,999.
Move approval.
Second.
This is our annual contract for coagulant at the water treatment plant. This year was 0.985 cents a gallon. Last year was 0.91 cents per gallon. We had
That's a 9% increase.
Okay.
We had 2 bidders. High bidder was $1.39 a gallon, and there was no bids from 3 other companies.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. So the means-based discount is next, and does that involve Karen and Roe and
It
MJ?
involves everybody that's not here.
Aha. Perhaps we could, a motion to table that? And as a matter of fact, we could table that and also the reuse center vision. Am I correct in that?
I'd like to make a motion that we table item 5 under new business and item 2
Under informational?
informational.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Waterline Insurance.
Thanks for the memo, Jim.
Timely, right? 2 or 3 minutes before the meeting, I'm sure everyone's had a chance to go through it in infinite detail and brought their questions. There has been several inquiries, I guess, by residents, customers of the water system in town, inquiring about water service line insurance. And I think it's been spurred, I think the questions have arisen because there's been a company called Homeserve Usa that's been doing some direct mail marketing in the city, offering to insure the water service line, which is the homeowner's responsibility from the street to the house. So some counselors have asked for more information about this, and Terry was also asking as well for some information. So I didn't do an exhaustive study of this particular issue, but I just put together some basic information for the board to consider. There apparently are a number of ways that these water service lines can be insured, and I've got them sort of outlined here. There's probably 2 that are more feasible than others. The first thing a homeowner should do is check with their current home insurance agent to see if their home insurance covers this type of service line break. And if it's not covered, see if there's some type of additional coverage that could be purchased to cover this. It may be subject to deductibles. I talked to my own home insurance agent about it. doesn't seem like these are readily had by typical home insurance plan. So maybe not a great option for folks. The second option that I listed in the memo was this Homeserve Usa. It's a company that operates in a number of communities. They charge about $60 a year. They have a lot of details on what the coverage covers and doesn't cover. I think there are a lot of water systems that just, this private insurance operates in the communities, and they do a reasonable job, and people seem to be happy with them as a company, although I haven't done exhaustive research in the performance of the company, but they seem like they're in business, and water companies will refer their customers to them to provide that type of insurance. We had also received, the city had received information from the National League of Cities, which is an organization that apparently has an agreement with an insurance company called Utility Service Partners, which also provides water service line insurance to customers they claim across the country in all the different states. A couple of problems with that. There may be some procurement issues because this company seeks to have the endorsement of the city, so they could take the city's logo and say, the city's saying, hey, use us for this type of thing, this type of insurance. So Joe Cook, the city's procurement agent, talked to the Inspector General about it, and there was some issues, some things that Joe was concerned about in that regard. And then the last option that I described in the memo is to have the city provide that type of insurance coverage for the city's customers. And what we've found is that there are some water companies, public water companies, the town of Drake, Mass has one, Harwich Water Department has one. They operate all around, the $60, $70 range per year to provide the service. There's some private water companies in Connecticut that we identified that also offer the service. What we'll find is that when these plans are reasonably well designed, for the money that people pay in insurance, it's more than adequate to cover the repairs that are needed to water service lines that fail. Our water superintendent told me that in Northampton we probably have maybe on the order of 10 service line breaks a year, so it's a low number out of about 8,600 service lines connections that we have in the city. So low percentage. These other public water utilities that have gone the self-insurance route have found that somewhere in the 15 to 18% participation rate of their customers choose to get the insurance. And that seems to be enough to set aside enough money for the repairs and then beyond what's necessary. Drake had reported that over a 7-year time frame after they had implemented the insurance program, they accumulated about $320,000 in a revolving fund because of all the insurance premiums that were paid, the limited number of repairs that were necessary. So that was clearly a solvent fund that was operating pretty well, I guess, from their perspective. So there's a number of ways to do this. I think some residents may be more comfortable dealing with the city as sort of an insurer. They can call us if there's a problem where we go out and fix it, versus dealing with a company like Homeserve, where they would have the insurance through this company, and then if they had a problem, they would contact Homeserve, who would probably have contracts with local contractors in different areas of the state to come out and do the repair work. So it's a matter of preference. I put this information together for the board's review, and I guess looking for any further direction at some point, whether the board wants to explore further providing this type of insurance, or whether just recommend that folks call Homeserve or other insurers if they decide they want this type of service. I guess the overall point is that the likelihood of a break is very minor, but if a break occurs, depending on the length and size and type of damage to your water line, it could be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to fix. So some people may want that type of insurance as a safety mechanism against an unexpected expenditure. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. I was fiddling around on the internet before the meeting. I was on the Portland Maine Water District website, and they actually have a link to the Homeserve Insurance right on their website. So folks, if they're interested in that, they can click right there and they can get the insurance pretty easily. So obviously some districts have been happy. There have been other districts as well that have reported good success with Homeserve. So it's it sounds like a policy decision. Is it there's clearly a private vendor that's offering this type of insurance coverage for people, but does the city, want to provide that type of insurance for folks, so. I attached a lot of information to the memo, you can take a look at it. I don't know if everyone lives in town, I'm not sure if others have seen the Homeserve, proposal. I got one in my box a couple weeks ago at home. And then there's, a couple of others, the one from Harwich and Drake are attached, you can take a look at it.
There's a listserv for our neighborhood, and I don't know if you noticed it, but when it came up, the question circled around our neighborhood in discussions, emails, and there's a surprising number of people thought, oh, maybe that's a good idea. I was a little surprised at how many people were interested.
Jim, did you play with the numbers, looking at the number of city customers and 15% participation, $60 a year?
No, I didn't play around with the numbers, but I'd be happy to do that. But I think there's one thing that becomes evident when you look at, I think the Drake numbers is that, it seems like what the water departments are doing that offer are setting up a fee to be competitive with with Homeserve and others that may be offering this type of insurance. So the $60, roughly $60. But over time, Drake, they've got a $300,000 revolving fund available. What the city could do over time is drop the cost of the insurance because of the money that accumulates. So over time, maybe you start at 60 and you see how it works. And if there's very few and the money accumulates over time, you can actually drop the cost of insurance to the benefit of the customer. That would be one benefit of the city doing it, is that it would be a way to provide cost-effective insurance to folks. Over time, should our case prove to be similar to Drake? And what I've heard from some of the Connecticut water companies and others is that there's so few of these breaks, people want the insurance, but there's not a lot of expenditures that happen because of them. So,
It looks like we bring in about $75,000 a year, more or less, according to the numbers.
Well, you have 8,600 customers, water meters in the city. You take, 15% of that's 1,200 or so. 1,200 times 60.
So I'm intrigued by the city providing the service, and I was actually thinking of trying to do something by offering a lower price initially.
Right.
Because those numbers indicate that we probably could get by with less than $60 and try to do some goodwill. The other is that I think it's a great educational tool, that as we advertise it, we reinforce this concept that pipe is the responsibility of the customer and not the city. Because I'm sure if you ask most people in the city who's responsible for that pipe, I'm sure a large majority would say they think it's the city. Right. And so I think that's just a side benefit of this whole discussion. Even for the people that don't take advantage of the insurance, they'd at least sort of be reminded of that. So I think it's kind of an interesting concept, and I'd be in favor of the city providing it, which always leaves people with the option of going private if they want to.
Jim, in the case like Drake or any of the other ones where the city's doing it, they're providing insurance, but are they also providing the doing the work?
They are. Yeah, they're operations people who do the repair.
Oh, that was the other question. What about off-hours repairs? Is the city set up to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No, we have minimum 3-hour callbacks.
I'm in a DPW meeting.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily have to do it in off hours. You could have a 24-hour opening.
They're all going to break Christmas Eve. You're right. There ought to be a certain time frame that they could respond.
Yeah, we'll get there within 24 hours. Right. Something like that.
I think it depends on the nature of the break too. If it's sort of a catastrophic type of thing and you want to get out there, if it's someone discovers they've got a leaky pipe or something and it's not, you can deal with it in the morning type of thing, then we'd probably evaluate each one on a case-by-case basis. The same thing, we can look at some of the details. There's a lot of, obviously if you're providing insurance, it's like the snow plowing, the snow insurance thing. There's always how the insurance is defined that's important. So we need to make sure that, limit your liability, Homeserve, for example, limits it to, I think, $6,000 a year as a maximum any homeowner can get in repair work. So determining what the details are would be important. But if you'd like to, for a future board meeting, we can outline or come up with a structure for a plan. I can look at some of the numbers and provide more detailed information for the board to see how that might work in Northampton.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Can I
I
ask?
think it would be good if the billing could be combined, built into the water bill, so there wouldn't be much of an extra billing cost.
It's voluntary, so we'd have to figure out how that would work.
Right. Everybody wouldn't sign up for it.
Check a box or something.
Yeah, check Bob.
Sure.
It is nice that, I like your idea that if the fund reached the point where it looked like it was solvent for a year or two, to adjust the rate downward. And make it even more enticing perhaps.
Operate it like an enterprise fund.
Yeah, I mean, in a way.
Yeah, it would be revolving.
Well,
Revolving fund.
and the advantage of a box on the standard bill is that I think it's gonna actually increase the likelihood of participation. It's just an added thing.
And it would be quarterly too, right?
Right.
You wouldn't have to pay the whole year.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I'm just curious. I mean, you guys are kind of throwing this around here, but what would happen if you did have, like, say, $500,000 banked? Besides saying to people, "Hey, we'll only charge you $10 a year," is that money that then the city might say? That would the city then be able to go in and take that money for some other use?
No.
No.
Typically no.
Okay.
It's enterprise fund money.
Christmas parties, except,
Did trips like the
GSA.
GSA did? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, my buddy at GSA has been strangely silent on that issue.
Well, so I would say, assuming that everyone's comfortable with this, that work it into your workflow. I wouldn't push everything off your desk, and
There's a couple things ahead of this.
I think, yeah. All right, well, thanks, Jim. Solid waste planning update, is that also? That's actually this board, this subject.
Right, it's David, MJ, and me, I guess. That's what's meant by this item.
And do you have anything?
Well, we reported a couple of meetings ago that we were recommending status quo for operation of the transfer stations, and that the only change for FY13 that we were contemplating was the means-based discount for transfer station permits.
Right.
And we did talk some about other changes that we think we should take another look at in the fall as we get closer to closing the landfill. And so we talked about reduced hours at Glendale, possibly closing Glendale, perhaps additional hours here, such as a Sunday operation. Restricting some of the difficult to handle waste materials if there's another depository in the city that people can use. Take advantage of that and not offer those services, especially if we have to close Glendale. So those are the kinds of discussions we had, but we didn't come up with any firm recommendations other than let's keep the sticker price at $25 going into FY13 and the hours the same as we've been operating.
Okay. Now, do you think it would be appropriate to ask Karen to come back with an update on the stickers? We've got a good chunk of a year.
Sure.
With the sticker program. I mean, does that? I don't know how this falls on the annual calendar, but it's roughly 9 months. Actually, more than that.
Impact, sure.
Great. And then finally, the stormwater and flood control assessment report. All right, so CDM is a consulting company we hired about a year ago. more or less, to survey and evaluate our stormwater system here in the city. We have about 100 miles of pipe running around the city. We have 13,000 catch basins, is that right? 1,300?
I don't think there's that many.
Let me check. 3,700.
3,700 catch basins. The pipes, the outfalls, we have about almost 300 outfalls around the city. And then we have the flood control dikes. So CDM has looked at all of that on the general level, and they've looked more specifically at a few engineering scenarios, places where we have chronic problems. And they've just, almost as an exercise, in order to tell us what sort of money we're looking at if we wanted to tackle one of these big problems. What might that look like? So we have this report. It lays out the kind of expenses we're facing if we simply comply with mandated reporting requirements and some requirements from the Army Corps of Engineers, and how much we would have to spend if we wanted to tackle some of the projects that are just waiting to be dealt with. The issue is going to be, how do we pay for it? This doesn't fall into either of the enterprise funds. It's general fund money, so it's competing with police, fire, schools, buildings. So at some point we're going to have to make a decision as a board how we think it should be funded. Should there be some kind of an enterprise fund? Should we implore the city council and the mayor to spend the money? What's the best way to approach it? So I believe the report will be ready for everyone to get either a hard copy or an electronic copy within the next few days. If we move in the direction of an enterprise fund, there will be a process that we'll have to walk through. Everyone has to be on the same page. We have to get all of the city council, the mayor's office, everyone have the chance to look at the material, think about the issues, see if we can consolidate around an approach that everyone more or less agrees on. So we have 2 weeks to look at it, and I was hoping we could have a discussion in 2 weeks about the report. That perhaps it will lead to a vote in 2 weeks, or maybe in 4 weeks, about what we think as a board would be the best way to move forward. If an enterprise fund does turn out to have support, then we probably would want to have at least one public hearing. There's been discussion about some kind of a joint meeting with the city council to talk about it, get their input. I think first we have to decide what do we think. So I'd like to start that discussion in 2 weeks. Want to add anything, Jim, or Nat?
Does everybody want a hard copy of the document? Or?
Yes, please.
Yes.
We had some, we'll have that in storage in a few days. We had some production issues with the copies that we received, so we need to get some plans and some other things taken care of. But as soon as we have it, we'll get a copy.
Well, let us know, we can stop by.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will it also be available on your website or anything?
We are going to post it on the website.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Councilor Tacey.
Could I get a hard copy of that also?
Sure.
Thank you.
It's gonna be a quiz.
All right. I was just going to say, I was away when the stories broke, but Ned was kind enough to give me an update on the personnel issues you probably read about in the paper. And I just wanted to reassure you that it was my impression that there are no policy issues involved. It's not the sort of thing where, even if the board were fully briefed, it's not the sort of thing that we have to be thinking, you know what, we need to change some things around here. It's a personnel matter. They're handling it in the Human Resources Office. It seems perfectly appropriate to me. If anyone wants to give me a call, I'd be happy to talk to you about it and explain why I felt that way, but it seems like it's being handled very well. The report about a gun possibly being on the premises came in second or third hand, and my understanding is the police checked it out and there was unfounded, no problem found. So, I mean, it's been in the press a lot lately, and it seems to me the department's handling it, and the city is handling it basically in a way that seems fine to me. Like I say, give me a call if you have any questions. Councilor Casey?
Before you adjourn?
Yeah, well, I was going to go around the table. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go around the table first.
Yeah. Gary, anything?
I'm curious about the letter. We got a letter, you forwarded the letter to us today via email. I think
The North Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I'm kind of curious about that because I thought that North Street was involved in the planning. I don't have a solid memory of that, but that's kind of what I remember.
Well, this is not the North Street Association.
Okay.
This is the North Street Neighbors, which we hadn't heard of until very, very recently.
Like today?
Yesterday. So it's interesting that they actually, if you see the letter, all the CCs on it, they actually personally sent a letter to everyone on the CC list. So it's kind of odd that they're expecting 15 different responses from 15 different people. And here's Terry Culhane CC'd yet, he gets the letter. I'm CC'd yet, I get the letter addressed to me also. So I'm not quite sure what they are looking for a response. We did draft a response for the mayor, as our thoughts to each one of their 4 different items that they brought to our attention. I believe that there has been a public process behind it. Not everyone's going to agree with the final plans as far as green space, sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. The department had to make some decisions to get it into the queue this year for construction. We believe there should be sidewalks on both sides of the road versus some parts of the organizations don't want it. They want it on one side, more green space. So then you have a potentially roadway that people have been calling dangerous because of all the traffic on it, that you have everyone crossing the street randomly because you don't provide sidewalks. We don't have the money for $85,000 for granite curbing. That's one of the things here also that we have granite curbing at the street radiuses because they get beat up by the snow plows, but in the straighter length we ran bituminous curbing to save money. Like I said, the calculated cost was an additional $85,000 to put in granite curbing throughout the whole project. Con Street we were able to do it because we received a $93,000 CDBG grant. We received no money this year. So, like I said, the board awarded the contract a few years ago. We're waiting for the mayor's signature on it as we speak. We expect that it's going to move forward at this point. We're still talking with the mayor about a public meeting with the group to see what their real requests are and how we deal with that if we can. I don't want to delay the project. It took 3 years of trying to get all the funding to make this particular project happen. And there are miles of other city streets that want to get paved too, just as badly. So I'd hate to delay the project.
Oh, Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I feel like the letter seemed a little unfortunate in some regard because I think that the engineering department did a pretty good job at trying. We had a couple of public meetings about the project, and the engineering department met with several individual property owners after the meeting that had real specific issues that came up in the course of the public meeting. Like, all right, well, we definitely need to meet with these folks to work out what the issues are. And I know David Valletta worked pretty hard to meet with a lot of people after the public meeting so we could address issues that came up. And the other thing about the public meeting, I felt like we got great input in that. And I think I've said that in other meetings just to let the board know that I felt like it was a pretty effective process. The interesting thing is we had about 50 people in the public meeting that we had, And there wasn't a lot of agreement among people in that meeting. I mean, there were a lot of, some people wanted sidewalks on both sides, some people wanted on one side. You'd ask somebody here, it would be different than what they want over here. So the impression, if you weren't involved in the process, if you just read that letter and you see all the signatures, it looks like there was like a block of people that said, this is what we want, and you're not listening to us. When I think the reality was quite a bit different than that, where we had a lot of the folks, I think, that signed the letter were in the meeting, and a lot of people had opposing views on what they felt was most appropriate for the project. So, in the end, you try to deal with everything to the extent that you can, and to make sound engineering judgments about what makes the most sense. You try to accommodate as many comments from the property owners as you can, and it results in a great project. And we're excited about having the project done, and the letter puts a little bit of a bad spin, I think, for people that just get this letter and don't realize what the process was. So I think it's going to be a great project. We're still excited about it, and hopefully everybody that lives in the street will be happy when it's done.
As you recall, I was at the meeting, and I was amazed at how many people were there in the first place, how many of them spoke, and how well it was presented by the letter. I mean, it was just clear. So it's totally contrary to the feeling you get from reading this.
So, is it at the mayor's office now? Any further decision?
I haven't heard anything yet. We sent over a draft memo to him today to look at. So I haven't heard back from the mayor's office as of before this board meeting.
I was thinking about this as in terms of any policy question that we might have, and in general, our policy is putting 2 sidewalks when we spend substantial amounts of money on a street. So that is our policy, unless we wanted to revisit that. And as far as using bituminous curbing, just speaking for myself, it didn't seem unreasonable. I mean, plenty of other projects that need funding.
If this was a new street being built to subdivision standards, they would have sidewalks on both sides. New standards for subdivisions do require granite curbing though, just so you are aware of that. Throughout.
Really? Any new subdivision?
New subdivisions,
Wow.
that's correct.
Well,
So isn't there some contradiction to us doing bituminous?
It's not a new street. It's rebuilding an existing street.
well, I'm going the other way. It's surprising to me that we're requiring granite curb on new subdivisions. But it was good to hear that where there is granite curb on the corners, that it's there. Because I do think that's where you're really going to get the most abuse.
There was also an alternate for concrete sidewalks, and the differential, I believe, was $7,000. So the department probably will award that alternate, so we have concrete sidewalks rather than bituminous sidewalks. It'll last much longer, better quality.
Is there a case to be made for granite curbing in terms of a lifespan? On our street, the bituminous is breaking up. It's cracked away from all the driveways.
Well, granite curbing typically does have a longer lifespan than bituminous. It all depends how hard it gets hit with plowing and other factors.
Is the mayor aware of the detail of the neighborhood meeting that was held? How many people and how long the meeting went on?
He's verbally aware that part of the memo we did state to him the meeting dates that we did have. There's also a questionnaire that was put out by the former Councilor Plassman on it. I think we had 70 or 80 responses from the citizens of that neighborhood of what their priorities were as far as bike lanes, pedestrian access, crosswalks, things of that nature. So that was incorporated in the design also. One of the problems with North Street is got a very narrow layout and just can't accommodate everything that we would want in a modern street. There's not enough room in the width of it.
Gene?
Just so the board's aware, there's a meeting at 6:30 on Lincoln Avenue at Joe Squires' house with the neighborhood to discuss the North Street reconstruction in the traffic with the tractor trailers with Owen Freeman Daniels. Just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, man, it's late in the process.
I know.
This thing has been grinding along for years. Put so much work into this.
How much would it cost if we don't act on the contract that the mayor is now holding? In the way of price increases or revision? And I don't expect a figure answer, but I think it's a factor that ought to be relayed to the mayor.
Every year we think, I believe everything's gone up in price every year.
We'd lose this season if we don't.
We're barely making the season right now. In Delana, it's, we can't have dirt roadways during the winter out there. I mean, it's just, the way this was set up is that we would have all the utilities in the base course for winter, and then we do final paving next year.
I'm sorry.
Well, the other issue is the two low bidders were separated by like 1% of the bid price, which means we had really good bids and a good low price. And so, I mean, I conclude that if you bid it again in 6 months or a year, it's very likely to just go up. Far more likely than to stay the same, and certainly not go down.
I was just gonna say, to address David's question, that if there's a delay in start time, and there's sort of a domino effect for the ability of the contractor to get the work done on the schedule that they had planned, so it opens the city up to potential liabilities and claims because of the delay. Because they may incur increased costs, it's impossible to know at this point what they would ask for, but I mean, just that specter exists, that, you know, they could come back and say, you know, we had a claim for a delay here that increased our costs and we want to get paid for it.
It's hard to imagine exactly what we could do right now. I'm open to any suggestions.
Influence the mayor to sign the contract.
Yeah, that would work for me. So it sounds like it's at City Hall.
It is, we're in conversation with the mayor's office.
Okay. Great, or not great. Thank you. So that was, you brought that up. Chris, anything that you would hope we would talk about?
No, I'm good, thank you. The North Street one was the, cause that just sort of popped in out of the blue. What I would just say about that is that if I was involved in a process where, and you were talking about there was a diversity of opinion at the meeting, I think in part that was because at that point in time there wasn't a target, that you were still soliciting input on a general proposal, and that now you've got a group that's been able to coalesce around things that they don't like.
I'm not sure I'd agree with that.
Is that, no?
I'm not sure I'd agree with that. I mean, we had a fairly detailed design concept that was proposed in the meeting, and we were soliciting, I mean, to get feedback, you need to provide some level of detail, and I think that's what we were shooting for, was to have, I mean, you can, I don't know if that's what you sensed when you were at the meeting, David, but.
Oh, I think it was very complete.
Yeah.
It was well done, too.
Yeah.
It wasn't splotchy, and it was audible, it was clearly.
Yeah, I mean, we were probably, I don't know, we're at 75%, or, I mean, we're pretty well along, and particularly it's like the service tree, you know, what the road's gonna look like at the end. People aren't too concerned about the utilities and what's going in there, but it's really just, you know, bike lanes and sidewalks and road cross-section things that we had that detailed pretty well, to solicit specific feedback about it. And somebody had also done a survey before that meeting, actually, which was more, I think, what you're thinking, Chris. Someone had done a survey to solicit feedback, like, what are your dreams for this job as the city starts to design it? And then we had a ton of feedback that I think Laura Hansen sifted through about, we really looked at bike lanes, or we want to have a crosswalk at every, you know, here, and here, or whatever. So we had also a long list of input from people before we even started the design, because someone did a web survey. It worked out great.
That was Plassman.
Was it Angela? Yeah, Council Plassman. So I felt like that was a really good thing for us to have as we started. So, you know, I think the process was pretty good, and I'd be quick to admit if
Oh, no, and I wasn't implying that the process wasn't good, I was just saying, I'm just sort of curious as to what's sort of been the catalyst for, you know, action at this late a date. But
My observation is it's standard operating procedure.
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, certainly, if I was visited with an outcome I didn't like, the first thing I would do would be object to the process. I mean, that's what you do, so. So, no, I'm good.
Nothing.
National Public Works Week, nice poster behind Terry.
Nice.
Reading lasting impressions, look at that gorgeous bridge.
Is that the Clown Street Bridge?
On River Road, it's almost
The
done.
next one.
Engineers rock.
Nice.
Actually, I went to City Council last Thursday night, and we had a wonderful proclamation read by the mayor for National Public Works Week for Northampton Public Works.
Very nice.
Jim, did you get your copy of that?
I did not. But I was in Portland, Maine over the weekend and had a big banner in town celebrating National Public Works Week. So,
Okay.
engineers on vacation.
It's coming.
Dave, all set? I'm all set. I'm gonna go home and go to bed. Oh, and Gene.
Thank you.
Oh, of course.
At 4:10 this morning, I did this before coffee, so I had to get it. I'm just looking for somebody to say, that's the Trinity Row Park. I only made 6 of them. Just for somebody to say, it looks okay before I do a detailed drawing with, it's going to have a well pit, it's going to have drainage of pipe. I'm meeting with Dave Sparks tomorrow morning about the water service that may or may not have to be renewed. There's, it's just a slab, there's 18 inches of stone under it, it's pretty simple. If anybody has any comments or anything, or,
Is the present fountain coming apart? I mean,
Yes.
is it breaking
Oh, yeah.
up?
It's non-functional.
Okay,
yeah, it's a disaster. One side of it's 6 inches higher than the other,
okay.
yeah, so.
So
I know.
my understanding is that
Deep in the
your
shallow.
group has raised money.
We've got all the money for the fountain. He's actually donated $11,000 from the Florence Casket Company in Russ Christensen's name. So anyway, and then we collected other money through T-shirt sales and the Florence Mercantile to win $3 grand. Florence Savings Bank is throwing in money. East Hampton Savings and Northampton Co-op. So we'll do more than the fountain. We hope to move the flagpoles, do some more electric work. There's some stumps that need to be removed. They've been there for years. Trees have been cut down. So any input that anybody has, I actually dug up a few fountains, different construction practices. I wasn't too awful concerned about 4 feet of frost protection. We ended up with about 42 inches if you take into consideration the stone. And I've never seen 4 feet of frost in the grass anywhere. You see it in the streets that are plowed off. So I was pretty comfortable that we'll have number 4 rebar 2 feet on center all the way around the outside to pin the outside wall to the slab below. It'll be 8 inches thick on the outside. It'll actually slope in 2 inches in 7 feet to get to a drain somewhere. And right after we did the Florence fountain, I think we passed it around, it was immediate. I mean, it was perfect. We had, everybody asked me if it was Mimi Odgers in the picture, and it wasn't. That was during the chicken barbecue at the Florence Civic Center. They all thought it was Mimi Odgers in the picture. But anyway, we're excited as hell about
That's
this.
nice, that's a compliment.
Yeah, the fountain heads have been donated by a fellow on Powell Street, and his name escapes me. He's given us 6 already. We put them on the fountain that's just been done by the Civic Center, and it made too wide a spray. It actually went out into the street, and so he changed the pitch on 2 more, and then one was too straight up, and so I got 3 more.
All right.
They do these fountain heads for casinos, and anyway, he's donating those. So anyway,
So my understanding is that
the department is looking for a fairly concrete proposal.
Yep. Yep.
And how much more detail do you feel you need?
Well, I guess the big question is who's gonna build it? If it's going out to bid, we need very detailed plans and specifications so the contractor knows what needs to be built.
Okay.
Versus an in-house, we kinda know what we need to do. The big thing I'm concerned about is that resources and when we'll be able to do this in the timeframes that the people would like to have this done. I don't know if they're gonna mesh very well.
And I spoke with Rich, and he's not convinced that he's even got the time. And I spoke with Billy Sullivan, and he didn't know how they'd squeeze it in. If have to, we'll build it ourselves. I carry all the insurance, and $11,000, which is the number that I had gotten from members of the board of the DPW, we can't get it built for $11,000. If you put this out to bid, I'm looking at probably somewhere maybe $27,000 to $32,000. It needs a new water line. I know what needs a new water. It's an old galvanized water line. It's still got the old galvanized box tops. So I know the water line's got to be renewed, and $11,000 is not going to cover it. And no offense. I mean, I know you guys kicked it around, but you'll never get a contract for 11 grand. It's just impossible. There's Chrysler's 13 yards of concrete in the slab. There's 4 yards of concrete in the wall. There's 1,160 pounds of steel. There's a mason. There's pumps. There's pump chambers. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, well, all right, so perhaps some further discussion between you and the staff, so something can come to the board where we say, sure, that's great, go for it. Not quite sure what, even if I should be on the agenda.
Yeah, I know. That's why I just brought it in just to show you if I get a consensus that, yeah, we're on board. I know we already took a vote one time and said, go ahead. But this is pretty much the same thing. It's bigger than the fountain up by the Civic Center. But it'll be pretty much the same. The cobbles are existing on the site. Actually, the rocks that are around the existing fountain now, on the outside, the perimeter, will be utilized right inside. They're pretty interesting rocks, too. They're not just, looks like somebody hand-picked them somewhere.
Right.
So, anyway.
Could you
I'm
tell me
excited as hell about
to
it.
match the rocks? Kind of same,
Yeah.
a similar, darker.
Yeah, we're going to try.
I just struck with in the photo there that
I know, it's bright white.
yeah.
I know. We're gonna try and color it a little bit. And the drain, I haven't talked to John Hall yet, but somewhere the drain will have to drain into something, rather than just out. I suppose it could bleed it into.
It's gonna have to be some kind of recirculating pump system. We can't.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. With a pitched pipe so we can drain it in the winter. So you can.
So you guys will talk.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Gene.
And I just got 48 more T-shirts ordered this morning. They'll be in at the Florence Hardware store day after tomorrow. In case anybody's interested, $15 a piece.
All right. Any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Can I see that letter from the last week?
Looking forward to that stormwater report.
That's good stuff.
Oh, that'll be some
Yeah.
fascinating reading.
Yeah, well,
The
the number at the bottom is most fascinated by.
15, I think it's 15.
Thank you.
big issue.
Now, did it just CC it, but they
That's
also
the
don't
problem.
send it that address to it?
That's the problem.
So it's,
Slight dehydration
or
or
response.
utilities.
I
They're
gotta
gonna do a CAT scan just to rule out.
I don't know how Bill does it.
A house lot that might be
but she's
a mile up.
I saw her just before the meeting.
Anybody that wants
And
to
so they don't
tie
get
in
anything.
pays.
Well, they do.
That it was
You're
tie
no
in
street
for
neighbors.
utilities
Right, but I mean,
installed
like, they
by
don't get
somebody else.
No, but there was a
And I
sign
think
issued by
maybe
about
there's a go, maybe they put a sewer in.
Yeah,
Maybe a private
right.
guy put the sewer in, who knows?
About half of them.
And so then you got two
are
less more
not
upset
my
tie in
street.
smaller towns, who knows?
Looks like there's families, lots of families that signed up.
The last meeting that.
But
Yeah, I know. And in the moment, I'm just like, what do I do?
Yeah,
just caught us off guard.
And
Got a problem, got a problem.
Thanks.
No problem.
So you will have those documents online, because I know that Adam.
Did you get the email when you took it from me?
I did, actually it was better than I had, here.
There's a couple things.
We actually do introduction, some maps will be sitting out on the so we've asked that they
Yeah, no, I
submit
thought it
it.
was
Well, that's
very
what I mean,
readable.
exactly, that they
Exactly.
put that in.
The report itself and
because
then
there's
the
a specific
appendices.
need and they picked
It's
up.
gonna be a big
I
document.
think there'll be some
So you
specific, I
can't
don't know, we
use
can
the
put
water
together,
sewer stuff
it will help the city
that
council.
I thought that was one of the reasons
Yeah,
to raise the
they're gonna
water
get
sewer,
their sink
was
teeth
bank
into it.
money to do
So,
that.
okay.
How does that work?
No, stormwater flood control is over the general fund. All over the general fund.
So those machines that have to be, the ones that don't have any replacement parts,
The pumps.
the pumps,
The engines.
those are something that would have to come out of the general fund.
Yes,
That's right.
yeah. The
See, I
report-
come to these meetings, I know the issues.
The report addresses actually the cost
stressful.
of replacing the pump station, flood control. And possible work on the levee system, and it's not small.
Crazy.
In fact, just to get through the mandates from the Army Corps and the MS4 permit is about $2 million in the next